Welcome to Master Your Market. I'm Chris Ashmore. You know the cliche that you don't go to a dentist after you get a toothache. You go to a dentist before you get a toothache, before you get a cavity. In other words, you go to a dentist so you don't have to go to a dentist. Sounds strange, but it's the same thing for a business owner with engaging a lawyer. You go and see a lawyer before you're in a world of hurt. And soon after I set up my business, Chris Ashmore Media, I went and saw Tracey Mylecharane. And she's a lawyer, and she sorted out my T's and C's, my client contracts, and the terms and conditions and privacy policy on my website. And she's with me today to talk about legal traps. She's also a business owner, and she explains how she markets her business. She's big on Instagram, which I wouldn't have thought for a B2B, but there you go. Enjoy. Well, Tracey, thank you. Firstly, thank you for joining me on Master Your Market. Now, being a business lawyer, you'd probably see a lot of mistakes that people make with their legals. What are some of the biggest pitfalls that you would see?
Thanks for having me, Chris. Delighted to be having this conversation with you today. Great question. Look, hands down, the biggest mistake I see business owners make is taking shortcuts. So no criticism, no judgment. We all do the best we can with the information we have at the time. I get that. I respect that. But we're not doing ourselves a favour as a business owner by using a template or borrowing a friend or cobbling something together from Google for your legals. My view when it comes to these things is DIYs for Bunnings, not for your legals. And your legal documents in business can be one of the most powerful tools you have in your business. It is not the place to take shortcuts. So that's what I see, hands down, first and foremost, absolute biggest pitfall.
Absolutely. Before we go into the documents, I was just listening it was Business Essentials Daily podcast, just a bit of a cross promotion there. It wasn't me doing the interview, but my colleague Jeff was interviewing, I think her name's Anne Nalder, Small Business Association of Australia. And she was saying, and this is an organisation that helps businesses across the country, and she was saying, as an example, there was a business owner who'd been in business for about 20 years, and he had on his terms and conditions, on his website or something somewhere, a 7-day refund policy. Now, apparently, and you can correct me on this, and this is me trying to remember the interview, that's not what you're allowed to do. And he was fined $5,000. Now, he could have gone to court or just suck it up and pay the fine. I think he engaged with SMA to help him deal with this. But had he gone to court, he probably would have lost. And had he lost, he probably could have got a criminal record being a director of a company. And so there's a couple of things there. First, would that be right? And the other one is, what they were talking about is there's so many laws that a business owner has got to know and can't possibly know everything. Yeah, and the penalties, if they get things wrong, can be, for a small business, $5,000, that's a lot of money. Big business probably can take care of it, but for a small business, that could be a huge amount of money. Would that be right? Would that 7-day term thing is not correct, and you shouldn't have that on your website or whatever? And the other thing is there are just so many laws out there that you can't possibly, as a business owner, know them all.
Yes, that's right. You can't know them all. Couple of things to say on that. A lot to unpack there.
Yeah, there is.
Yes, that would be right, generally speaking, because a 7-day refund period doesn't comply with the Australian consumer law. So for any business. So that's to answer your question about would that be right? Probably, yes. But to say anything more about it, I don't know, because it depends on the industry, the business, all the things. But you've hit the nail on the head, Chris. We don't know what we don't know. When it comes to running a small business, depending on your industry, you have to comply with not only the Australian consumer law obligations that you have, because whether you're a service-based business or a product-based business, you have obligations under the Australian consumer law. So when we think Australian consumer law, we think, first of all, boring. Two, we think, oh, it's for businesses like Harvey Norman, and if I buy a toaster and it's faulty, they have to give me a new one. And yes, that's right, they do. But there's a whole host more obligations under this consumer law that every small business owner needs to be aware of. And then, depending on the industry, there are further obligations depending on what you do. So my answer to that is work with a business lawyer who knows all the things and can share with you what it is that you need to know and what you need to do. So you shared a penalty, a $5,000 penalty, and that's really mild in terms of penalties when we get these things wrong. And as of late last year, there were changes to the consumer law and there were changes to what small business can and can't put in their contracts. And it's called unfair contract terms. So just because you want to put something in doesn't mean you can. But if we're talking penalties, if we get something wrong now as a small business owner, because we used to be exempt from a lot of these rules, we're no longer exempt. If a small business owner gets this wrong, the fines can vary. So the financial penalties can vary from $50,000 to more than $2 million. It just depends. So not only when I say don't take shortcuts, do I really, really mean it because you want to set your business up for success. You don't want something like that bringing you down. So not only do we need to get it right to avoid those types of penalties, we need to get it right so we're protected as business owners, because if we don't get some of these things right, we're not entitled to rely on our documents. The whole thing can be set aside. It really is a minefield.
Absolutely. And at risk of sounding like an advertorial for yourself, Tracey, it's important then not to engage a lawyer after the fact. I mean, you'd have to anyway if you're, getting tapped on the shoulder for fines and stuff. But knowing what you can say and do and words and everything on your website before the fact, and I suppose engaging with a business lawyer before you need one.
Oh, absolutely. Well, prevention's better than cure, isn't it? And that's what I always say. But for the first 12 years of my career, I was that lawyer after the fact. So I worked in litigation and dispute resolution for just over 12 years, acting for business owners when things go wrong because they didn't know what they didn't know. So yes, there's always going to be a place for that. But now in this business, I flipped it and I work with business owners so they can reduce their risk by having contracts and agreements that work. And there's a lot to be said about the work we do, but it's sharing with a business owner what they need to know and what they need to do and how to do it.
Well, consumer law aside, I just want to sort of differentiate what you lawyers do versus accountants. Now, I have an accountant, of course, and they helped set up my business, register it, deal with ASIC, and of course deal with the tax office, tax time, all those kinds of things, compliance issues in that regard. But what does a business lawyer do, and what do you do that an accountant wouldn't do?
Yeah, absolutely. So the accountant will sit under the umbrella where they provide all their financial and tax advice, and your lawyer is going to sit under the umbrella where they provide all of the legal and process advice. So all the things you did with your accountant, fantastic. What you would do with your business lawyer is work out what you need to include in your client service agreement, so your business terms and conditions. Processes and systems is really important, and it's a key part of what I do, which is around implementation. So your business lawyer is not only going to share with you what you need to have in place, what documents you need, what you need to have in those documents, and they will develop those documents for you. But a good business lawyer is going to help you with implementation and developing your internal processes and systems, because having your documents is one thing, knowing how to use them is another. And one's no good without the other. So it's the implementation and those processes and systems and giving you advice around your payment terms and how it is you can have reliable cash flow. And do you have to wait until the end to get paid? How do you deal with scope creep? When can you invoice? All of those really important things form part of that implementation and those processes and systems. So that work complements really beautifully the work that you do with your accountant. Right.
Can we have a look at some of those documents? What are, well, I suppose there's many, but what would be the top documents that business owners should really have from the get-go?
So a small business owner with a website, which is just about every small business these days, there are 3 core documents that every small business owner with a website needs. The first is your business terms and conditions, and that is the document or the terms and conditions you enter into with your clients. So your service terms, your design agreement, whatever you want to call it, you can call it anything, but it's the documentation with your clients. The second document is your website terms and conditions, and that's very different to the business terms and conditions. Your website T's and C's is going to deal with what's on the website. It's going to protect your intellectual property. It's going to keep you protected in terms of information you're sharing. It's going to deal with the Spam Act and consent if you want to grow your mailing list. Your website terms and conditions deals with what's happening on your website. And then the third document is your privacy policy. In this day and age, Chris, we all know it, people are becoming more aware of who they're giving their data to and what's happening with it. There is a thing called the Privacy Act in Australia, and this is really important for small businesses to know about because we need to make sure that we're sharing with potential prospects or potential clients how it is we're going to treat their personal data. And if you have a contact us page on your website, let alone sign up for my course or sign up and buy this, but even so much as a contact page where you leave your name and email address, that's actually personal data for the purposes of the Privacy Act. So people are entitled to know what you're going to do with that data. So those 3 documents are your core 3 documents. So your business T's and C's, your website T's and C's, and your privacy policy. Start there. If you don't have a team, if you don't engage contractors, if you never do anything else legally in terms of documentation, but you've got those 3, you are good to go. They are your core foundational documents for a small business.
Well, I engaged you for doing my T's and C's and website and privacy policy. Thank you very much. But what I thought was terrific was how detailed it was and tailored to what I was doing or what I'm doing, which is producing podcasts. And it was very well set out how that reflected even the structure of what I was doing, but also the way that I would invoice clients and what the expectations of them, not only reflecting or protecting me, but protecting them, to do things properly. But that's the point, though, isn't it? You can't just get off-the-shelf templated documents. It's got to be tailored to your business, yeah?
If you want them to work for your business, yes, they need to be tailored. And this is part of what I do. Your legal documents are for your business, so they need to be on brand for you, and they need to look like you, and they need to sound like you. They're a part of your business. And like I said a moment ago, if your business documents are developed properly, they can be one of the most powerful tools a business owner has. They can help convert prospects to clients. They build the brand because you're setting up your clients' expectations. You're managing those expectations so you can exceed those expectations. So your clients walk away with a stellar experience and they want to share about your business, and that's developing your brand. It's growing your business. But printing out a document that somebody else uses or a template that you've purchased, which sounds, most of what I've seen in terms of templates are just so awful. They don't do your business any favors. You don't know what you don't know, so you don't know if they do all the things they need to, and you don't know if your systems and processes and the way you do things, you don't know if that's consistent with that document. And this is one of the many, many reasons why I say DIYs for Bunnings, not for illegals. You don't want to take shortcuts on this stuff.
Just want to ask a question about company structure. Now, when I started, I was conscious about starting as a company versus a sole trader. So I'm, Chris Ashmore Media Proprietary Limited, and of course there are tax reasons and accounting reasons why I prefer the proprietary limited structure, and also giving me the opportunity to grow in the future. But is there any big difference legally between a sole trader versus a company?
Absolutely. And it depends on what your ultimate vision is and what you want to achieve in your business, which can help inform what's the right structure for you. And there's no one size fits all, because what's right for you and I won't be right for the next person, because we have different businesses, different risk profiles, different appetite for risk, and different visions in where we want to take it. So your sole trader is obviously when it's just you as an individual. You get all the money, you're responsible for all the expenses, everything sits with you, you carry all the risk. I won't talk to tax and tax planning because that's not appropriate. I'm a lawyer and we stay in our lane. Accountants will talk to you about that. But when it comes to asset protection and risk, that's where the lawyers come in. So your risk mitigation strategy in business, for any small business owner, you need to know your risk mitigation strategy. So that is how you're managing your risk. And there's 3 pillars to that. The first is your business structure, which is what we're talking about. The second is insurance. And the third is legal documents. So getting that first pillar right is really important. When it comes to a company structure, and most people know that as the Pty Ltd structure, that means that the company runs your business. You might be a director and a shareholder, but the company actually owns the business and runs it. So that means the company receives all the revenue and the company is responsible for all the expenses, but the company carries the risk. Now, there's a caveat to that, Chris, and we won't go into it. It's complicated, but there is a thing called the corporations legislation. As a director, you have to comply and you have to do things properly. But let's say you do everything properly, hand on heart, you do everything properly as a director, diligently. You then have a layer of asset protection. If something goes horribly wrong in the business, your personal assets aren't exposed, your home, your car, your savings, things like that. That's really important for many people. For some people, it's not important. For others, it is. But from a legal perspective and the conversations I have when we're talking different structure options, my conversations focus on asset protection and reducing your risk in business.
Right. There's a lot to think about when it comes to legals. I'm just going to change tack here a bit and have a look at you and your business. I mean, you're a business owner. This is called Master Your Market, and we always want to know how other people or how to properly master your market. How do you do it? How do you differentiate yourself and get the word out there for your business?
That's such a great question. My approach is really simple. I'm a fan of keeping things simple. My approach is two-pronged in terms of how I differentiate myself. One is I'm really crystal clear on my why and my purpose in my business, which is to enrich the lives of as many business owners as I can. I'm anchored to that why, and that helps me differentiate myself, because my next pillar to this approach that I take is to share value. Quite simply, that is how I differentiate myself, to share value. So I like to share as much value as I possibly can to business owners, real value, things people can do now, answers to questions, tidbits, guidance, tips, all of that. There's a few layers to how I do that sharing value component, but that's what I do. I'm anchored to my why. I want to enrich lives. I want to help people reduce their risk in business with agreements and contracts that work. So all of my content and marketing is around that, sharing value on how to do that. And you've already hit the nail on the head. There is so much to it. So I don't ever run out of content ideas or topics or things to talk about, because there's so much. There's so much to talk about.
That's fantastic. And I think I used to be a headhunter in Tokyo for
I didn't know that.
Firms. Yeah. For 8 years, I recruited Japanese lawyers for multinational companies, in-house lawyers, basically. But I used to take out from law firms into in-house.
I did not know that.
But I did dabble with meeting with a few law firms, and I find that law firms are probably the worst marketing organisations going around. They're hopeless at marketing themselves. They make a lot of money, but they don't tend to spend any on doing proper marketing. They all look the same. They all seem the same. I understand most of their clients are multinational companies anyway, these larger firms. But when it comes to, so what you're doing is, streets ahead of anyone else. But when it comes to, say, your marketing strategy, do you have a marketing strategy using social media or newsletters, or how do you do that?
I do. I do have a marketing strategy. And again, it's simple because that's what I find works for me. And my marketing strategy is I have a podcast. So that's one way, which is a very effective way where I can share information with small business owners to enrich their lives, to help. So sharing value. So I do that through my podcast.
And what's the podcast name?
Rise Up in Business.
Good.
So it's been going for a couple of years. And honestly, my podcast is one of my absolute favourite things in my business because it's the way that I get to share value. And I love that. It lights me up. So I share value with the podcast, and we do use social media, and it's primarily Instagram. And I'll say this, Chris, when I started this business 5 years ago, my then business coach said to me, Tracey, you need Instagram because that's where you'll reach a lot of your ideal clients. I didn't know what Instagram was. I had to go and Google how to Instagram to set up an Instagram account. And I did all the things that she told me to do. And I loathed talking on Instagram. I loathed talking about myself because, as you said a moment ago, lawyers don't do that. And people typically, in my experience, think lawyer, dull, boring, stuffy, boring, unapproachable, arrogant, egotistical, all the things. And I think largely a lot of that's right. There's many reasons why I left traditional practice, but I really struggled to talk on Instagram initially because I felt really uncomfortable talking about all the things that I was doing. But then as I did it more and more and received more and more feedback from business owners who would reach out to thank me for sharing whatever it is I've shared because it has helped them, because they have resisted reaching out to a lawyer for so long because traditional legal practice is unapproachable and it is confronting and it can be a little overwhelming. I learnt very easily that being able to relate to people was one of my strengths, and it just came naturally to me. And being approachable was something that I just am. So the more I did it, the more impact I had, the more I learned how to do it better and reach people and share the information that they needed. So Instagram has become a pivotal part of my marketing strategy. It's our primary social media. We do have an Instagram account and we do use Facebook, but I'm not active there very much. I'm very active on Instagram because people go there to not only find information, but find the right information. So I feel that social media lends itself well to my clients to go to find the information that they need. So my podcast and Instagram are really fabulous ways that I use. They're really fabulous marketing tools that I have and I use to reach my clients. But I have an email list and I have a website. And the website is really important because people these days, they hear about someone or they see someone, they want to verify that this person is the real deal, and then they want a sense of the person. So my website does that, and there's many resources on my website. There's masterclasses that I have on the website for people who want to ask the same question I get asked every day. So I've got them there for information for people, and I have an email list that I email every fortnight, and I love that mode of communication with my community because they're responsive to me there. I engage with people there, and I share information there that I know is valuable and that I know is important. So that's my very simple marketing strategy, Chris.
Well, it's manageable. It seems
it is.
It's not overwhelming. LinkedIn, is that? Do you have a presence on LinkedIn?
I have a presence on LinkedIn. I don't find my clients are there though, so okay. I know that lots of people think that LinkedIn's fabulous and it's where you should be, and there's all these statistics that say you should be there. I don't vibe well on LinkedIn. I don't feel that I connect with small business owners on LinkedIn the way that I do on Instagram. Don't know why.
Right.
Just the way it rolls.
Interesting. Yeah. Because as you're talking, I'm thinking Instagram, really. But then again, there wouldn't be many lawyers doing that on Instagram or Facebook.
I don't think there are. So it's very easy to. So it's very easy to have a point of difference when I'm just doing what's consistent with my why.
Yep.
I don't think too much about the rest. I don't get caught up in all the noise and the trends, and I've never danced on a reel or anything like that. I don't do any of that. I just share value with small business owners. And you're right, there's not many lawyers that do it. And that's cool. It works for me. Obviously, it doesn't work for everybody. But I was very surprised 5 years ago when I was told this is where I need to be, because this is where I will be able to share real value. I'm so surprised, fast forward to now, just how many beautiful connections I've made through social media, through Instagram, and a large percentage of my new leads come from Instagram.
Interesting. That's blown my mind a bit, because we were always told small business to business, go on LinkedIn, and you've turned that on the head for me.
Yes.
I'm going to have to go away and think about things now.
That's my experience. And like legals, marketing's no different. There's no cookie cutter approach. There's no one size fits all. And so what works for one won't necessarily work for the other. I think that you need to dive in and really consider the intricacies of each business, because each business operates in a different way. The business owner, some are introverted, some are extroverted, some want to, some don't want to. Some have different ways to share their skill or their knowledge or their expertise. And so different platforms suit different businesses.
Tracey, thank you so much for your time. And I'll be in touch, because you've helped me out with my legals, and will continue to do so. I know I've got to keep updating them, but in the meantime, thank you again, and I'll see you later.
My absolute pleasure, Chris. Anytime. It's always great to chat with you. Thanks for having me.